So in the case of this intrinsic and extrinsic factor in coagulation everybody knows. What is coagulation means basically clotting of blood. Blood clotting is what we call by the name coagulation. Now there are certain basic events in coagulation. Here you can see that coagulation involves two main pathways. And before we go into that pathway, let's understand what is actually that coagulation. Here you can see that in every coagulation, the main events which are happening is that there is a type of protein which is present in our blood. That protein is known by the name fibrinogen. And fibrinogen is in a liquid form or in a soluble form. And that has to be converted into a fibrin. I will show you a picture of a fibrin threads. Here you may be able to see how a fibrin threads may be appearing. So normally this is how the fibrin threads may be appearing. Okay. So normally this is in a liquid form. These are the fibrin threads. Okay. Just like fibers, they are a network thread-like structure, fiber-like structure, among which the blood cells will be getting and will be attached with each other, forming the clot. So in the case of this is the basic event. This fibrin threads is the main factor which is helping in the formation of the clot. Here you can see this is how a clot will be appearing. Now, in order to form this fibrin is not normally present in our blood. But there is another precursor substance or which is known as a fibrinogen that will be present in the blood. It is a protein, but it is in a soluble form. Now, because of the action of an enzyme known by the name thrombin, this soluble fibrinogen will be converted into a insoluble form or a solid form, and that is what you are finding here. These are the solid form of the or insoluble form of the fibrin. So that is the main event or main mechanism which is taking place during a blood clotting. Fibrinogen will be converted into fibrin. And for that, there should be an enzyme. That name of that enzyme is known by the name thrombin. So thrombin is the enzyme that converts fibrinogen into fibrin, and in the fibrin, these blood cells will be getting entangled and forming a clot-like structure. So that is how the normally the clotting is actually taking place. Here you can see that. See here also you can find another picture of the fibrinogen, fibrinogen getting converted into fibrin threads. So this is how normally the clotting is taking place. Now here if you look at this, you can see that prothrombin, the thrombin is the enzyme, and that thrombin is not normally present in the blood. Instead of that thrombin is in an inactive form. That inactive form of the thrombin is known by the name prothrombin. So thrombin is not normally present in the blood, only prothrombin is present in the blood. That is in an inactive form, that is it doesn't have any activity. When prothrombin is converted into thrombin will act on fibrinogen and converting it into fibrin. So that is the mechanism by which the blood clotting is taking place. So in order for prothrombin to get converted into prothrombin, one factor known by the name Stewart factor. Here you can find 10A, the activated form of 10A. There are different type of clotting factors in blood. I will show you the picture of these clotting factors, and these are they are numbered as 1 to 30. Here you can find that the factor number 10 is popularly known by the Stewart factor. Stewart factor should be in an active form. So when Stewart factor is converted into an active Stewart factor, that will be working on prothrombin, converting it into prothrombin, and thrombin will convert the fibrinogen into fibrin. Now there here you can see that this is the active form of the Stewart factor. Here you can see that. And one important thing that you can see here, it is at the Stewart factor, these two different pathways are actually merging. Here you can see that there are one pathway is known as an extrinsic pathway, another pathway is known as an intrinsic pathway. So both pathway will be finally reaching the level of Stewart factor, and after that it is a common pathway, and that common pathway will be leading to the formation of thrombin and resulting in the formation of fibrin. So this is how the clotting is taking place. Now here we have to understand what is intrinsic pathway and what is extrinsic pathway. And now here you can see that, we'll come back to that. Now there are two different types of pathways are there. One is intrinsic and second one is extrinsic. The simplest one is the extrinsic pathway. Now extrinsic pathway is usually triggered or stimulated by external trauma. That is, if there is some injury on your skin, there is an external trauma, and the exposure of tissue factor. There are two important fit situation is there. So it involves tissue factor and one more substance known as a factor 7. We will know what is the name of the factor 7, that is pro-converted. The name of the factor 7 is known as a pro-converted. Okay, so these are the two important factors, one is tissue factor and factor 7, and that will be activating the factor 10, which is the factor 10. The factor 10 is the Stewart factor. We have already seen here. So here you can see that in the case of extrinsic pathway, some kind of external trauma or external injury leading to the loss of blood will be leading to the conversion of pro-convertin into an active form. Here you can see this is the pro-convertin. The number is here. The pro-convertin is in the inactive form, that will be converted into active form. And active form will be alonging with the another substance known as a tissue factor. That tissue factor and pro-convertin will together act on Stewart factor or factor 10, converting it into active Stewart factor, which will be acting on prothrombin to convert it into thrombin, and thrombin converts the fibrinogen into fibrin. So this is the pathway that is known by the name extrinsic pathway. It is a very short pathway. Extrinsic means mainly external, because of some external injury. Now second pathway is known by the name intrinsic. Intrinsic means internal, that's the meaning. So activated by internal factors such as exposed collagen. Sometimes you might have heard that some doctor says there is a clot inside your heart, or there is a clot in your blood vessel. So in such cases, intrinsic pathways are working. Now number of factors are involved: factor 12, factor 11, factor 9 and factor 18. Factor 8. We will say the names of that. One is factor 12, Agyeman factor. Then factor 11, plasma thromboplastin antecedent, PTA. So Agyeman factor, plasma thromboplastin antecedent, then plasma thromboplastin component, PTC. That is another thing. Then 8, anti-hemophilic factor. So these are the four factors: anti-hemophilic factor, PTC, PTA and Agyeman factor. These are the main factors which are working in the intrinsic pathway. Now what happens here, you can see that in the case of here, the first one is the factor 12. What is the factor 12? Factor 12 is the Agyeman factor. Agyeman factor will be converted into active form of the Agyeman factor. That is why they put an A here. This is the inactive form, this is the active form. When Agyeman factor is converted into an active form, that will be acting on the next factor, that is factor 11. Factor 11 is the plasma thromboplastin antecedent, PTA. And that PTA will be converted into active form of the PTA. Then comes the next one. This active form of the PTA will be working on next factor, that is plasma thromboplastin component, PTC. That will be converting the PTC into an active form of the PTC. Then what we are seeing is that there is a substance known as anti-hemophilic factor. When this anti-hemophilic factor is in an active form, there is a factor 8. This factor 8 or anti-hemophilic factor will be working on Stewart factor, converting it into active form of the Stewart factor. And that will be producing the thrombin from prothrombin and finally resulting in the formation of fibrin. So here you can see that number of little more steps are there. Here it is only one step is there. But here 3 steps are there. So intrinsic pathway is little more complicated than extrinsic pathway. Several factors are there. 12, 11, 9 and 8 are involved. 4 main factors are involved here. Factor 12, factor 11, factor 9 and factor 8. And they will be activating the factor 10, which is a Stewart factor, and finally resulting in the clot formation. Here you can see that it is a slower process compared with extrinsic factor because there is no loss of blood here. Only a clot is formed inside our body. So the body doesn't need to act very fast. On the other hand, if there is some injury or cut in your finger or any part of your skin, immediately body has to work. Otherwise, what happens? There will be loss of blood from your body. So, in order to prevent the loss of blood, the body will be working very fast. So that is why extrinsic factor, extrinsic pathway is more quicker. Here you can say provides a quick response to injury, whereas intrinsic pathway is more slower. So these are the 2 different type of pathway, and you can see that both the pathway are finally merging at the level of Stewart factor and converting prothrombin into thrombin and fibrinogen into fibrin, and that level is known by the name what is common pathway. Both intrinsic and extrinsic pathway converge at the level of factor X or factor 10. Then factor 10A or activated form of factor 10A along with the factor 5A. What is 5A? Proaxelerin. So that is a proaxelerin convert prothrombin into thrombin. Here you can see that. So one is Stewart factor, then other is 5A. 5A is actually the proaxelerin that together converts the prothrombin into thrombin. So that is what is happening, and thrombin will be working on fibrinogen, converting it into fibrin, forming a stable clot, and that is what we are seeing here. This is a clot. So this is the mechanism by which the blood clotting is normally taking place. So here you can see that in the use of the different pathways of blood clotting, the purpose of this different pathway is that one for a quicker response and another for a slower response. So extrinsic pathway is normally triggered or active, caused by external injury or external trauma. Intrinsic pathway is actually caused by internal injury or internal problem. So, and there is a common pathway. You must be also able to explain what is a common pathway. In this common pathway, it starts at factor 10 or Stewart factor, and along with the factor proaxelerin, it converts prothrombin into thrombin. And thrombin is an enzyme. That enzyme is converting fibrinogen into fibrin. And along with the blood cells, this fibrin will be forming a clot. And that clot is actually blocking the loss of blood from your injury. So these are the mechanism by which the different types of pathway are working in your body. So that is regarding the different types of pathways.